The news media is one of the least popular institutions in America, and somehow things seem to get even worse this week. 3 CNN journalists resigned Monday over a retracted story about a Trump advisor's ties to Russia. And much of the media went into a collective meltdown over President Trump's tweets yesterday about 2 cable news hosts. Watch as MSNBC guest dramatically change his point of view in just a year's time.
Donald Trump is a feminist. He is an equal opportunity employer and insulter. He will make fun of a man's appearance. He will make fun of... We can't have feminism unless everything is on the table. He's a pig. He's a vulgar pig. He's physically disgusting to look at. I mean, that's what I find ironic about the way he starts to always go after other people's physical attributes. Donald, if you're watching, we're from Queens. I'll meet you in the schoolyard, brother.
Oh, sure you do. And if things couldn't get even worse, listen to MSNBC's Chris Matthews suggest that President Trump should kill senior White House advisor Jared Kushner, who is also his son-in-law.
This is the Romanovs. Just a thought. The Romanovs. Is it?
Well, I mean, that's certainly something.
Is it a royal family instead of a Democratic or Republican form of government, or is it a family running the government? Is it Ivanka and Jared and the president sitting around in the White House upstairs ruling the world? You know, one good thing Mussolini did was execute his son-in-law. I mean, I'm sorry, Cacciano.
Mussolini.
Oh.
President Trump's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, spoke about the media this morning.
It's incredible to watch people play armchair psychologist, outwardly ridiculing the president's physicalities, his mental state, calling him names that you wouldn't want your children to call people on a playground. You would punish them for doing that. And then all of a sudden feigning shock when he wants to fight back and defend himself and hopefully change the conversation, because the conversation right now is a one-way conversation of toxicity.
Gutfeld, I think the media is used to destroying Republican politicians, and Trump won't play that game, and now they're flailing because they don't have a plan B.
You know, I want to ask a couple of questions here, test your memory. Do you remember when Donald Trump jokingly threatened to hit Mika with a backhand? That was Joe Scarborough, January 30th, okay. 2008.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Do you remember
Jesse out when Donald Trump asked if Fred Thompson's wife, Jerry, works the poll? Oh. No, sorry, that was Joe Scarborough, June 4th, 2007.
Okay, good.
Do you remember when Donald Trump asked a group of people if they should vote on whether Miss California, Carrie Breesian, was actually good looking? Oh, no, that was Joe Scarborough, May 13th, 2009. So who is sexist? Who is sexist here? Can we please stop turning this pretentious pair into victims, because they've been trafficking in this stuff forever. The entire staff of Morning Joe, as we saw by those clips, are a bunch of hypocritical drama queens. They cultivated this relationship with Donald Trump. They kissed his butt. They rip him when they felt that it benefits them, so they gain respect at cocktail parties. Then they try to reel him back in and cultivate his friendship so he might do the show. So it went back and forth. Like they are actually a media swamp.
I would agree with you, but I would say
Juan jumping in.
I like what you just did. I would agree with you that they can be pretentious and they're self-serving, because I think all of us in the media, we're all about the ratings and being self-serving. But let me just say, when you
Speak for yourself, Juan.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't care.
Don't throw us in the swamp with you, please.
Oh, it's swamp to say we care about success? No,
I'm only in a mud bath, but not a swamp.
Okay. But I would say, wait a minute. Even if you were arguing that they might be guilty of some sexism, I don't think you can get away from, look at that face on Carly Fiorina, or, oh, there's Hillary Clinton. I was watching from behind.
The party that defended Bill Clinton in the White House with Monica Lewinsky has no standing to talk about dignity in the White House.
Are you kidding?
Kimberly
That's where your argument goes? That's the best you can do?
That's pretty good.
I can do better than that.
Oh, good. I want to hear.
Okay, Megan.
So it's really easy to forget that these same hosts came after my show and came after me and my co-host, not only for the way we look, but what we wear on television, which is the very definition of misogyny and sexism. So just let me finish. Something that I found deeply offensive, all the women that come on Fox News, especially on Outnumbered, are very capable, strong, independent, intelligent women. It's why Fox puts us on television. But Mika Brzezinski said that we were just legs and dresses and short skirts, I believe was the exact quote. That is the definition of misogyny. Did that get any media attention?
Yeah.
No, it did not get the same kind of media
But let me
attention.
ask you something. Are you guys now telling me that Mika and Joe are the president? They're at that level? No.
There's deep hypocrisy going on when you can say these things about conservative women on television. And again, I don't condone what the president tweeted. I think as a general rule, men shouldn't talk about women's cosmetic surgery just as a blanket overall statement. That being said, the idea that they are somehow these martyrs of the media and that somehow they are above all the list that you just said, Greg, is absolute hypocrisy. They're using this and using these tweets to go after President Trump right now and using it to weaponize these things against him. And I think at a certain point, the media needs to stop acting so hysterical over a tweet when we can point to things like I grew up and learned about certain sexual things I can't say on television because President Clinton was president when I was coming up in my formative years. So let's just stop
He really
with
was
the idea
sex ed.
of comparing. But let's not compare a tweet to what happened in the Oval Office.
You know what Tucker Carlson said?
Get to respond.
You know what Tucker Carlson said yesterday? He said, you know, the president's tweet brought joy to his enemies and made his supporters ashamed. Now, you stop and think about that. In other words, it actually not only distracted from his agenda, which is like a serious political argument, but you see Republicans and people who've defended him, Sean Hannity, Jeffrey Lord over at CNN saying, this was not a good thing to do.
I did not defend the tweet, but I'm saying this media reaction that's going on right now is so completely overblown. And the idea that Joe and Mika Brzezinski are somehow these tenets of feminism or ideals in one way or another is absolute absurdity.
Kimberly, let me get you in here for a second because Morning Joe has been a platform for a lot of misogyny when it comes to attacking Sarah Palin's personal appearance, the way she speaks, her family life. They don't really have a solid ground to stand on when it comes to calling Donald Trump sexist, do they?
No, and by the way, this is the best thing to happen to them, okay? They're trying to push Joe's album. They want to be hipster.
Wait, is this all been planned? Is this pre-planned?
No, really.
To sell Joe's album?
This whole thing where before, President Trump used to go on the show when he was, DJT. Now they're like, oh, no, we're so offended by him. I think it's part of their whole desire to be, culturally acceptable and cool. Right. And he released, the video with his hair spiky.
It's bizarre.
And, Mika swooning over him. And, by the way, they love this. They're, laughing. And because now they feel like, okay, we're, superstars here. Everyone's talking about it. Yep. We're getting, the sympathy. And everybody's bandwagoning on our side. Because before he was supposed to be a conservative, but when Hannity called him liberal.
So Donald Trump, can I just say, Donald Trump is the best thing to happen to Mika since she stole Dana Perino's haircut.
Oh, wow.
Way to stick up
Those are fighting words.
I know. The old haircut.
Right.
I will say you're making the point.
Glad you're keeping track.
But for anyone who lives outside the Beltway, I have good friends that I speak to all the time, grew up in Phoenix, still live in Phoenix. They've never heard of Joe and Mika. I had friends texting me, asking me, who are these people? I don't know who they are.
Right.
And the fact that we've given them, the president has given them this attention is unfortunate.
Great point. So she makes a point that basically the country has no idea who Mika Brzezinski is. They can't even pronounce her name. So they see Donald Trump hitting back at a weak MSNBC anchor, and they think, you know what? If he fights back that hard over his brand being attacked on cable news, he's going to fight back that much harder when America is attacked by our enemies.
Wow, what a leap, because it looked to me like he's thin-skinned, like he's just jumping at as what you guys described, what Megan described as a little-known cable talk show, not getting great ratings, and yet he is in there with vulgar, arguably misogynistic comments to this woman about blood. And let me just say,
it was about her surgery. He was actually telling her she had. It was a surgery.
Come on, Greg.
No, it was like she
was. She was bleeding badly from her facelift.
Listen,
I want to give him every benefit.
Saying get a better doctor.
Okay. Like bleeding badly on the carpet at Mar-a-Lago.
What about Scarborough's comment today that says basically, the president said, oh, you know what, I'll intervene with the National Enquirer to stop an embarrassing story if you guys apologize to me. What is this? That looked like extortion.
And then he was asked to reveal his sources on this, and he's saying he won't. So again, if you're going to make an allegation
And why
like
did
that
he wait
against the
till
president
now?
of the United States,
Fake news,
you should bring up to it.
Fake news.
But
Yeah,
wait,
one.
Yeah.
Speaking of fake news, I want to look at a Gallup poll. Only 27% of Americans this year say they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers.
Yeah.
So, as much as
All
you
right.
like to
That
talk
sounds like real
about
news.
how Donald Trump is this or that, no one is believing you.
What?
I'm talking about the polls right now.
Well, let's talk about polls. Because
Wait.
if you look at it, they don't believe cable
Wasn't
news.
that a real news?
They don't believe newspapers.
It's
and this
Gallup.
has been going on for years, not just
Gosh.
now with this incident. This is, in fact, trust in American institutions, but the press has gone down. So you're right about that. But remember, Donald
you.
Trump's approval ratings are like mid-30s. He's not much higher than the press.
And you know what? The Democrats' approval ratings are lower than Trump.
No,
so don't try to tout
What are you
that
talking
poll.
about?
Kimberly Guilfoyle, I have a question
That's
for
not
you.
true.
Donald Trump doesn't pretend he's an aristocrat. He doesn't pretend that he's
Right.
this blue-blooded Bush dynasty. I owe
Careful
the
what you say about
presidency
dynasty.
to my son. Sorry, no
Jesse.
offense, Meghan McCain.
Keep it.
So
It's a low blow.
the media doesn't understand.
I love the McCain family. Everyone
The
knows.
media
My
has not
parents get so
accepted
excited
the
every time
fact
you do
that
that.
Donald Trump is a street fighter.
Right.
And they're constantly surprised. When are they going to give the guy the respect he deserves? Because he took down the Bush dynasty, took down the Clinton dynasty, took down about 17 Republican presidential candidates.
Strong candidates.
When
too.
are they going to give the guy the respect he deserves?
Well, listen, I don't know. I mean, if they actually pay attention to the series of accomplishments and the agenda that he wants to put forward, perhaps, I mean, if he has a pro-growth economy, I think perhaps no one will be able to deny the accomplishment.
Right.
But the problem is they want him to magically transform out of Aladdin's lamp into somebody that he's not. And the reason he won is because he's not your average politician, and the working class men and women across this country and a lot more people actually related to him, believed him, trusted him to go in there and do something radically different in Washington. And that's why he won. And the poor candidate of Hillary Clinton, which was a rejection of that establishment kind of candidate and Clinton corruption, did not prevail.
But I don't think people bought into this kind of behavior.
Well,
you know,
okay,
you guys always want to say, oh, Juan, it's the liberals, it's the Democrats, it's the media.
Can I respond to Kimberly?
Hang on, let me just finish this
Builder from Queens.
I'll finish this point, Greg.
Right.
I'll cede the floor to you. But I just want to say, I listened to Republicans. I listened to Charles Krauthammer last night on Special Report say, you know, this guy, it reminds me of a Duarte, however you pronounce the Filipino dictator's name, or Hugo Chavez, that this is not normal. This is crazy, this behavior by this president.
Okay.
I listened to Republicans in the Senate. I listened to Murkowski, Graham,
It doesn't
Collins.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Can I tell you why?
Please.
Because these are words and not deeds. You need to reframe this. You need to look at it the way a lot of people now look at it, include Condoleezza Rice and myself. I will take the little stuff if somebody is right on the big stuff. If you believe that ISIS must be destroyed, and then guess what? You destroy it, which is happening, I can live with a few misguided tweets. I can live with a bit of rudeness.
No
I
kidding.
can live with a bit of obnoxiousness or crassness if I realize that probably the worst group of people that ever existed right now are being incinerated in the desert.
Well, what you just heard from San Francisco ought to be highlighting the need for lawmakers in Washington and maybe the press, too, to focus on the immigration crisis, which is real and bizarre and hurting people. But instead, another news cycle has been consumed by President Trump's Twitter habits as politicians and the press continue their meltdown over his attack on the hosts of MSNBC's Morning Joe. Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee didn't even bother to deny what Trump tweeted is true. She conceded it, basically. Crazy Joe and low IQ Mika, she took that as an insult to crazy, dumb people everywhere. Watch.
When you begin to utilize, again, the diminishing of those who have mental health needs, Psycho Joe Scarborough, or Psycho Joe, or low IQ Mika.
Wait a second. Doesn't Sheila Jackson Lee have her own history of denigrating people with, as she put it, mental health needs? There was that time a few years ago when her staff told reporters that she, the suddenly sensitive congresswoman from Houston, referred to them as, quote, foolish and, quote, stupid and morons. Not to mention a number of other things that we cannot repeat on television. Different context, I guess. When Sheila Jackson Lee calls you dumb, it's a form of civil rights activism. Not like with Trump, where it's an attack on the disabled. MSNBC, meanwhile, booked a shrink to sort it out. She's never met the president, but that doesn't mean she can't diagnose him as mentally ill. She's pretty sure those tweets are a sign Trump could be a highly dangerous man, with an emphasis, of course, on man.
Also, for me, in terms of looking at his mental health, which I can't totally commentate on, I've obviously never treated him in my office, although he's free to call me if he needs one, because I think he does. But I would say that under times of stress, people decompensate. And when men decompensate in particular, they have impulse control issues. So that's what's concerning to me. And they lash out, usually with violence or with this type of harassment.
Can't commentate, but did. Congressman Keith Ellison, meanwhile, says the president shouldn't even be allowed to speak on social media.
I personally think that Twitter companies should treat him just like any other social media harasser and snatch his account.
Because when you're rude to people on Twitter, that crosses a line and we need to silence you. But hold on. What about the roughly 80% of Twitter users who are routinely rude to other people on Twitter? Well, that's different. They're not Donald Trump. It's an entirely different thing. Meanwhile, over at CNN, the conversation lingered on Trump's sexism. To be clear, not sexiness, but sexism. Because when you criticize someone's appearance, it is sexist. Unless it's Trump's hair or his weight or his skin color, in which case it's funny. But when you do it to a woman, that is sexist, unless it's a woman you disagree with politically, like Melania Trump or Kellyanne Conway, in which case it's just the truth and, frankly, pretty hilarious, or whatever. We'll let CNN explain the standard.
What kind of impact do you think these types of sexist attacks on female anchors, for example, not the first time he's done this, will have on your own party, your Republican Party's reputation?
There it is. Trump was rude to Mika, so it's a sexist political party now. The whole GOP, irredeemably sexist, including the majority of married women who just voted for it. Sexists, every one. Well, former ad man Donnie Deutsch has thought a lot about this whole thing, the tweets, the sexism, and frankly, he's just mad, furious, actually, on behalf of women everywhere. Here's Donnie's view of it.
He's a pig. He's a vulgar pig. He's physically disgusting to look at. I mean, that's what I find ironic about the way he starts to always go after other people's physical attributes. He's not mentally okay. And this is a man with nuclear codes. We have to start paying attention to it. And he's disgusting to look at. I know everybody's going to say, Donnie, but no.
On so many levels.
Let me tell you why it's not irrelevant. Because enough is enough. Enough is enough with this disgusting, vulgar man.
Did you hear that, America? A pig. No wonder the Muslim world dislikes Donald Trump so much. He's not even human. He's an animal with cloven hooves. Totally haram. Who hates women. And we'll tell you who's not going to stand for that, not for 1 minute. Donnie Deutsch, that's who. He's going to settle this thing once and for all, the way they do it back in the old country on the mean streets of Queens and the outer boroughs, with their fists like men. Between stickball games in front of the candy store. Sharks versus Jets. Just you and me, tough guy. Mano a mano.
Donald, if you're watching, we're from Queens. I'll meet you in the schoolyard, brother. You need to be schooled.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. This is where this needs.
Can you put the sunglasses back?
No. He's a coward. He's a coward.
We want to
coward.
We want to take it out of the schoolyard.
I don't want to.
All right, settle down, Fredo. It's just Twitter. John Daniel Davidson is the senior correspondent at The Federalist, and he joins us now. So, John, it seems to me that this is the single greatest thing that has happened to cable news. Nothing allows anchors to feel as virtuous, quite as virtuous, as when Donald Trump tweets.
No, it's terrible. Look, when the media reacts this way to Donald Trump's tweets, it just confirms his criticism of the media to all his supporters, because it's embarrassing to the media, which should be focused on a lot of the important issues that you were talking about earlier about sanctuary cities. There's a health care bill that's being debated right now. But, you know, I mean, that's not to say that Trump should be tweeting. I want to be clear. Trump probably shouldn't tweet. But when he does, he sort of provokes this overreaction on the part of not just the media, but Democrats. And I think that they think they're really getting him. You know, they think that they're really got the best of Trump when they act like this. And I wish somebody would pull them aside and tell them that it's not having the effect that they think it's having.
I feel like on some level, they love it. I mean, it's like Christmas and New Year's and your birthday rolled into one, because the subtext of all of this criticism, and I agree with you, some of the criticism I think is valid, shouldn't be tweeting. But the subtext of their criticism is, I'm a great person. I'm like way better than you. And by the way, I'm tough, and I'd beat you up if I could. They're holding me back, but I'd get you if I could. It's just like, really, yeah. I mean, they love it.
It's like it's a combination of sort of insufferable moral preening with this like schoolyard macho-ness, and it's all put on as well. You know, these are not courageous people that we're talking about here, because as you noted earlier, you know, they're very willing to have this double standard when it comes to Republican women, not just Melania Trump or Kellyanne Conway, but think of all the Republican women that have been part of GOP administrations in the past. Condoleezza Rice, the treatment that Sarah Palin got in 2008. I mean, for the media to cry foul over sexism now, when they're willing to turn a blind eye every time a Republican woman is trashed by other members of the media, is a little rich.
Having spent my life in newsrooms, I could add a lot to that observation, but let me just say, you're absolutely right. These are not the people who should be making that claim at all. And I like a lot of them, actually. They're nice people. But I wonder, though, if there is a kind of method behind this. I mean, my instinct when I saw these tweets was the president got mad and wrote this. They're attacking him, he hits back, and that's how the White House has explained it. But I wonder if there potentially is a strategic element to this.
Well, I think probably from a business standpoint, they think that it makes for good television, that it's entertaining. That's a lot of what these shows are about. And I think that they think it will cast them in sort of the heroic role against the villain in the White House. And so it's a chance for them to gin up this kind of controversy and this kind of battle, and not have to talk about really complicated, really thorny issues that are affecting our national life right now, like health care or immigration.
But do you think maybe the president had that in mind when he tweeted? I mean, a lot has been happening in the last couple of days, and some of it I think reflects well in the White House, some of it doesn't. But do you think maybe this is something that he did on purpose to draw attention from those things?
I'm hesitant to assign, you know, motive to what Donald Trump does and says, because he's shown in the past that, you know, it seems like he doesn't really mean a lot of what he says. You know, the tweet about the Comey tapes was really weird when he came out later and said, no, I didn't record Comey at all. I just was saying that to, you know, try to make sure that he, you know, was honest. But it was a weird thing to do. And so I think maybe sometimes Trump thinks that this is a way of him to get back at the media, which is unfortunate because he's the president. He doesn't need to get back at the media. He just needs to get on with the job of being president and let the media do its thing and ignore them. And he hasn't been able to do that so far.
Yeah, and he's drawn them out, and they've exposed who they really are. And I, for one, didn't want to see it. You know, I like a lot of these people. I don't want to know what they really think, but now I know. And so it's hard to go to lunch with them now. John, thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
As we continue tonight on Hannity, we continue with the great one, Mark Levin, author of the brand new book, Rediscovering Americanism and the Tyranny of Progressivism. You know, Mark, I was listening to you in the last segment, and you're talking about the need for the intellectual foundation. Founders, framers, Constitution, and even beyond that, those that inspired these guys. You know, I look at President Trump, and here's a guy that, you know, frankly, practical, common sense, instinctive knowledge that big government is oppressive and wrong, regulations are burdensome, it's hurting the American people, millions more in poverty on food stamps and out of the labor force, doubling our debt is dumb, you know, top-down health care is stupid. And he has all of that instinctively. And look at how those forces that support the opposite of what you're explaining in this book react to him trying to drain that swamp and get back to those founding principles, perhaps without the intellectual foundation that maybe you have, but frankly, you're one of a few people that really do.
They're definitely out to destroy him, and I think they're out to destroy him for three fundamental reasons. Number one, he's not one of them. And they really thought they'd get Hillary Clinton in 4 more years of this crazy leftist-type government. That's number one. Number two, he's striking them where they believe they have absolute monopoly control in the administrative state. the departments and agencies. We have this massive fourth branch of government that is nowhere in the Constitution.
The deep state.
That passes deep state, but it passes 3,000 to 4,000 laws a year without our input. It continues to operate despite the public will. It rejects electoral outcomes. That is the progressive leftist power base, the administrative state. And number three, the courts. The unelected judges and justices in this country, and you saw what a disaster they were in these district court cases, and thank goodness we have a Supreme Court that took a look at his executive order on immigration, and it was a 95% victory there for the president, and congratulations to him. Yep.
If you're talking to the president and you said, how do you defeat these forces that are selectively leaking, the corruption that is against him, what specific advice do you give him based on your research here?
Well, first of all, he can't defeat them. He can start the process of defeating them. And this is one of the things that bothers me. President Reagan was in there 8 years, started the process, and then the other Republican presidents come in and they unravel it. It's like with Obamacare right now. The Republicans are basically giving their imprimatur to a massive progressive government program. The way you do it is this. You shrink the size of government. If you're going to go into every department and agency, it's like hand-to-hand warfare in the jungle. That doesn't work. Slash them across the board except for defense and federal law enforcement and intel. Slash them across the board. 10%, 15%, 20%. Call in McConnell, call in Ryan, and read them the Riot Act, if you can. And if they won't do what the president says, then replace them. He's the leader of the Republican Party. Replace them. So far, I would replace them, but what do I know? So you need to do that. There's another issue, too. Well, no, I don't think so.
I'm with you, Mark. I'm sick and tired of it. They have no urgency, no fight.
Well, here's the problem, Sean. I have Russian heritage, so I go to jail in 2 seconds, you know, so that would rule me out, even though I can't stand them. That's a whole other issue. But that said, you know, I've been behind another movement called the Article 5 Convention of States, and I wish the president and his administration would take a look at it, even though they don't have a direct role. And that would allow us, through our state legislatures, to change the nature of this government, which has been stolen from us. This is not anymore a representative republic, not with a massive administrative state, or a federal republic with federalism, since the states basically do what they're told.
How many states are on board now?
Yeah. We have 12, and we need 34, but we have 12 without any real effective national push. That's a big deal. And the other thing is, we're not really a constitutional Republican. I don't know what we are, but the reason they're trying to chew up Trump is because Trump is not one of them. He doesn't belong to their club. And I'm going to say something else that's not even related to this. I want to thank the president for something. He gets attacked for this. Thank you for taking on the media. It's a damn about time somebody did. Don't stop tweeting. Be more careful with your tweets, but don't stop tweeting, because you're able to go over the head of the media the way Reagan did with his speeches. You can be more careful. I don't care. Are the media careful about what they report? No.
No.
So in any event, I'm one of those, count me in the minority, that says, keep at it, keep at it, keep at it.
Mark, always good to see you, my friend. That's why we call you the Great One. Thank you.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, the left's war on Trump. President Trump has shown he's not going to sit back and take endless attacks from the liberal mainstream media. Here he is last week at his rally in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Watch.
And we will never be intimidated by the dishonest media corporations who will say anything and do anything to get people to watch their screens or to get people to buy their failing papers. CNN. Whoop. Hey, the camera just went off. I can't imagine. It's covered live. The camera just went off. I can't imagine why. They tell you, these guys, the fake news. They tell you it's fake news. It's fake. Not all of it. Some of it's good, and some of the people are great, actually, but some are real bad, and they're really fake.
Joining us now with reaction, former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I don't know, I can't get enough of that. You know, when he's and he's in his element, and he's at these rallies, and we're all smiling. I mean, come on. Corey, you got to live through all of this. I mean, this is quintessential President Trump, and with a huge victory and vindication with this battle against CNN getting called out?
Well, look, Kimberly, as you know, the president time and time again has called out his critics for what they are, which is hypocrites, as you know. He's called them out for the fake news, for the failing New York Times, for the false stories that they've put forth. And most of the time he's done it on Twitter, and he's done it successfully. And what we've seen is the mainstream media, their heads explode, and 2 weeks later we find out that Donald Trump was exactly right. When he said there was no collusion with Russia, there was no coordination with Russia, there was nothing to do with Russia. Now we know that the Senate, the Democrats, the Republicans, they all agree there's nothing to do with Russia here. When he said about the wiretapping, we now know Susan Rice has to testify. We know that the former Attorney General has to testify because they were unmasking individuals for political reasons. So every single time the president's called something out on Twitter about the mainstream media and their false narrative, their heads explode, but the American people comes to find out he's absolutely right.
It's a great point. I mean, Charlie, you know, he points these things out, and they write these sensational headlines, and it's anonymous sources, thinly sourced, or in the case recently of CNN, one source. You know, and after all these corrections, all these retractions from the mainstream media, can they even be trusted? I mean, the president is onto something, and he started it during the campaign with saying the fake news.
Well, I think that when you show those clips from those rallies, that, you know, it's such a crowd pleaser when he goes after the media. And the reason is because none of those people trust a word that comes out of the mouths of these people in the media.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, and Trump, better than any politician I've ever seen, has been able to, was able to identify that and then tap into it. And as Corey knows, even better than those great examples he just laid out, you know, this has been went on all throughout the campaign, going back a year and a half, where Donald Trump would say something, he'd get you know, pilloried by the media. And then it turned out to be either correct or it would turn out to be a central issue that all the other Republicans, or in the general election, you had Hillary Clinton jumping onto the bandwagon sometimes of these issues that he brought to the forefront, and the media just killed him for mentioning, calling him a racist and a you know, corporatist and all this crazy stuff. But he's always been right about these things.
You know, it's very frustrating, I'm sure, you know, Corey, being up close and personal to the whole experience, because the mainstream media, the liberal media, has been incredibly unfair to the president. They were unfair to candidate Trump, and they've been grotesquely unfair to President Trump. But yet people also still criticize when he goes on Twitter to defend himself. You know, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, look, the American people knew this before they elected him. He is a counterpuncher. And when someone attacks him, he's going to fight back. But this is the amazing part. You have a candidate in candidate Trump who is unbelievably accessible from the media. The White House Correspondent Association president even said that he's unbelievably accessible. The converse of that was Hillary Clinton. She went into hiding. She was taking naps for, 12, 14 hours a day. She wasn't out on the campaign trail as she prepared for, they had the Scooby van. She's fallen asleep in the van. She takes 2 weeks to prepare for one debate. Donald Trump consistently gave interviews to the media all the time, from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Post to Fox News to ABC, NBC, always accessible. And then they go and try and criticize him. And look, Kimberly, the most disgusting part of it is many members of the mainstream media, as you know who they are. Oh, yeah. I won't mention any names. They say things privately to Donald Trump like, we love you, we just want to be next to you, we want to help you, and then they go on television, they criticize him. The hypocrisy of the mainstream media, I've seen up close, is disgusting.
Yeah, it's totally grotesque, and that's the problem, and I don't blame him for being frustrated with this, especially, recently, this whole example, Charlie, with, Joe and Mika. They had him on his show all the time. He was very gracious to them, always went on. They were wanting to have him there, and then they kind of turned on him when it became popular to go against President Trump. I don't know, maybe it was part of him launching his music career. He even invited them to get married at the White House and at Mar-a-Lago, and, and now this. But I can understand his level of frustration about the situation.
Oh, absolutely. And it's such an opportunistic sort of relationship with the media in so many of these cases. But I love, in the case of, he laid out his tweets about Mika and Joe coming down to Mar-a-Lago and trying to slum around for the weekend. And basically the press, the rest of the media has kind of come to their defense and claimed that none of it's true. But of course, it is all completely true. They were down there. They were hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, and you can only imagine. And I do think that sometimes these Twitter wars that Donald Trump gets into does kind of trample on a message. But that's the way he rolls. It doesn't mean that he didn't have these accomplishments. He has. He's still, pursuing other accomplishments along those lines. But I don't blame the guy. If I had his vicious wit and his ability to tweet out things like that and destroy my enemies, I probably would do it too.
Yeah, I mean, Corey, you saw it. I mean, he's like a verbal jujitsu artist. He's a slayer. So I mean, if you're going to go against him, beware.
He's the Ernest Hemingway of Twitter. We've said it many times, right? He's taken down his opponents on Twitter many times. You can ask Little Marco or Lion Ted or Crooked Hillary. We all know the names. Or Low Energy Jeb. We all know the names. But Pocahontas. But look, when you oppose Donald Trump, beware of his 100 million social media followers.
No doubt. A force to be reckoned with, indeed. All right, gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thanks for spending this Friday evening with me. Welcome to this special edition of Hannity, the left's war on Trump. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle in for Sean tonight. The liberal mainstream media continues to attack the president. The host of MSNBC's Morning Joe escalated their feud with the commander-in-chief by calling President Trump names and even accusing him of blackmail. Take a look.
We had so many people saying, hey, hope you're okay, hope you're okay, had calls and texts and emails. We're okay. The country's not. He packed about 5 lies into the tweets, which is very productive, 2 tweets, to pack 5 or 6 lies into 2 tweets.
He appears to have a fragile, impetuous, childlike ego that we've seen over and over again.
We got a call that, hey, the National Enquirer is going to run a negative story against you guys. And it was, Donald is friends with, the president is friends with the guy that runs the National Enquirer. And they said, if you call the president up and you apologize for your coverage, then he will pick up the phone and basically spike this story.
But it didn't end there. MSNBC guest Donnie Deutsch became unhinged in his attacks on Trump. Take a look.
He's physically disgusting to look at. I mean, that's what I find ironic about the way he starts to always go after other people's physical attributes. So beyond the fact that he's obviously not well, and Joe and Mika have a great comment, he's clearly, obviously obvious misogynism, the obvious vulgarity, the obvious stupidity. He's not mentally okay. You're a pig, you are a bully, and you are doing disgusting things to this country.
But, Donnie, doesn't it lower, again, the discourse to say what you said about his physical appearance?
You know what? It absolutely does. He is a vulgar human being. He's vulgar to look at. He's disgusting the way he behaves himself as the president. Now, once again, I'm going to elevate the conversation. Donald, if you're watching, we're from Queens. I'll meet you in the schoolyard, brother. We need to be school.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. This is where this needs...
Can you put the sunglasses back?
No.
My goodness. And President Trump responded to all that by tweeting, quote, watch low-rated Morning Joe for first time in long time, fake news. He called me to stop a National Enquirer article. I said no. Bad show. And earlier today on Fox & Friends, special counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway, slammed the media for its vicious attacks against the president. Watch this.
It's incredible to watch people play armchair psychologist, outwardly ridiculing the president's physicalities, his mental state, calling him names that you wouldn't want your children to call people on a playground. You would punish them for doing that. And then all of a sudden feigning shock when he wants to fight back and defend himself and hopefully change the conversation, because the conversation right now is a one-way conversation of toxicity. A lot of these people on TV do not criticize his policies. They do not criticize his actions and his beliefs. They criticize him.
Joining us now with reaction to all of that, Fox News contributor Herman Cain and Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera. Okay, so Herman, I'll start with you. Have you ever seen this kind of level of hatred and vitriol coming from the media directed at a United States president?
No. And as a friend of mine stated, these people are dipped in
dipped in stupid because they're focusing more on insults than results. Let's talk about the legislation that was passed yesterday called case law to keep the bad people out. Let's talk about the fact that this Independence Day, we're going to see the lowest gasoline prices in years because of the policies of the Trump administration. Let's talk about the 11 congressional resolutions that this president signed to roll back regulations that would allow this economy to continue to grow and boom the way it is. Let's talk about results instead of focusing on insults, and that's why they are simply suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, and as a friend of mine said, they are dipped in stupid.
Dipped in stupid. Okay, Geraldo, so what do you make of this? I mean, because you know all the players involved, you know the president very well, and you know Mika and Joe and Donnie Deutsch. What's going on here? Because it's a little bit of a double standard, because Mika and Joe have been very aggressive, very disrespectful to the president, have called him every name under the book, questioning his sanity, his mental state. They've called him a thug with how he behaves with world leaders, but yet now they're offended.
First of all, the clips you play, Kimberly, establish beyond any doubt that there is an unremittingly hostile atmosphere, a toxic, putrid atmosphere surrounding this president, generated by the mainstream media, whatever you call the journalistic establishment, most of whom hate this president because they all consider him an accidental president, and they all think that they are smarter than he is. I've known him for over 40 years. I am still proud to call him my friend. One of the reasons I love this president is that he's a street fighter. He's spunky. He will fight for what he believes in. In business, it works great. Running for president, it works great. It doesn't work so great when you are president and you're trying to run the country. Turning the other cheek is a concept unfamiliar to him, and I think that sometimes he creates a kind of conflict that hurts him. He exacerbates the negative vibes that are directed in his direction. But clearly, when you see this level of disrespect, when a second-rate commentator like Donnie Deutsch can so demean the president of the United States as if, he was, some low-level dishwasher employee, not that there's anything wrong with that. I think that it really is very, very telling that there is a level of disrespect that is malignant.
And Herman Cain, I mean, during the campaign, President Trump, they made a big thing of, if you're going to hit him, he's going to hit you back, twice as hard. He's somebody who doesn't mince words. I think, it's been consistent in terms of he's been very transparent with his tweets. He tells you what he's thinking, what he feels. He felt very disrespected by them in the show and the names that they have called him. But then some people say, well, this took kind of the eye off the ball and took the, the crisis with CNN and fake news out of the media. What do you think about that?
No, I don't think so. And this may be one of the first times that I agree with Geraldo.
Come on,
hooray.
Mr. King.
But in regards to your question, no, it didn't take the eye off the ball. The people who support Donald Trump, and I know this firsthand from doing a daily radio show, they don't care about all of the insults and the exchanges. They are looking at results. And yes, they don't like the fact that the liberal media tries to take the eye off the ball, tries to change the focus by focusing on insult exchanges. No, the people that support Donald Trump, they are looking at results, and the results are impressive.
But I disagree with you on this point, Herman, with all due respect. And I really I do. The détente lasted only 7 minutes or so. But here's where I disagree. Too many of the president's problems now are self-inflicted. When he tweeted that President Obama wiretapped his offices in Trump Tower, when he tweeted out that Comey better hope that there are no tapes of their secret meeting, and when he tweeted out that highly insulting, offensive message about Mika Brzezinski the other day, he created problems that were unforced errors. He could have been talking about his agenda, but because he is that street fighter, he hasn't learned the discipline. He has to be less impetuous. You want him trying to succeed. Many of his policies, as you indicate, are succeeding. They are positive. The stock market up 10% this year alone. Unemployment at record lows. With a firm foreign policy that's working for the United States. There's big business to do. He can't be fighting these little snitchy fights with insignificant commentators who wouldn't be recognized by their own mothers.
Maybe he's capable to do both, Herman.
He created these problems through the perception of the lens of the liberal media, not in the minds of those people who are looking at results rather than insults. I agree with you. When you say he created a problem with all of these various tweets, you are right. For the media, but not for the people who really care about the results he's trying to achieve for the American people.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. So the people that support him, Geraldo, that were so behind him, that big movement across this country, the working men and women across the country that said, listen, we want something different. We want somebody that's not going to put up with the nonsense, going to drain the swamp. They like, I think, his straight talk and his transparency. I think they find it refreshing and trustworthy that they believe him.
I would rather, knowing him as an accomplished businessman, I saw him turn the prostitute, junkie-laden Hotel Commodore into the Grand Hyatt that saved all of Midtown. I saw him build on the west side, the wrecked west side of Manhattan. I saw him take a garbage dump in the Bronx and make it a terrific golf course. Yes. I've seen him achieve things. My point is, when you fight these totally insignificant problems brought on by insults that you react to as if they were, gigantic, catastrophic statements from from Putin or the Chinese premier. You distract from your own agenda.
Yeah, but now
I think he's got to.
But now I think, Geraldo, it's not. You just talked about his personality and what's he like in his background, right, Herman? He's a builder from Queens, and he still is.
Here again, one point that Geraldo and I agree on. These are distractions, and that's what the media focuses on, trying to create distractions. But what I'm saying is that the people who support this president for the results, they are not distracted because of this. Right. These distractions feed the liberals, the progressives, and the Democrats who care more about their political agenda than they do about the people's agenda. That is what the difference is.
But what about the fact, Geraldo, that, there was a lot of news that could have been a little bit unfavorable, dicey for the president in terms of health care. So the media wasn't focusing on health care. They weren't focusing on what was going on in North Korea, perhaps as part of the strategy. Sometimes he puts a tweet out there and let's see what happens, and it takes the media off on a rabbit chase.
When I worked with him every day for 6 weeks on Celebrity Apprentice, I watched him masterfully. You could ridicule my comparison. It's a show, but you really saw him producing. You really did. Here's what I would like, and Herman mentions health care. What I would like is to take this energy, now he's directing at Joe Scarborough, a failed congressman from Florida. Take that energy he's directing at these critics and maybe think about calling a key Democratic moderate and saying, hey, let's get together and get a health care plan that makes sense for your side of the aisle and my side of the aisle. Let's get the great middle of both great parties, and let's craft something that works. Let's achieve something historic. History won't remember that he made fun of some lady's plastic surgery. That's not a historically significant. But if he were to craft,
do you think that's realistic? What he's saying, Herman? What Geraldo is saying? The Democrats really going to be willing to come to the table?
No, they've already said they don't want to come to the table. They're not going to come to the table. And I would agree with Geraldo, if the president simply ignores the insults, the results will rise to the top. But his DNA is that if you hit him, he's going to get back. He's going to hit back. That's just his DNA. And we're not going to change that. But the good news is that the results are far leading the insults. And if we stay focused on that, we, conservatives and supporters of the president, will be just fine.
And there you go. All right, thanks, gentlemen. And